Wow. Guys, it's the Nerdy Movie Guy, and if you had just watched Ahsoka Episode 5, you probably have the same reaction as I did. You're speechless. So, let's go ahead and break this episode down. There is so much packed into this episode, but I want to start with the smaller details first before we get into the big stuff, and I want to start with Jason Syndulla. Now, this is something that's really neat. He's using the Force. Now, I don't know if he knows he's using the Force. Maybe Hera hasn't told him. Maybe Hera is afraid of him becoming a Jedi because he's scared that being the son of Kanan Jarrus, that he's going to make some heroic sacrifice one day and die. Maybe Hera's just afraid of him using the Force and becoming a Jedi. Now, the mystery behind his character, or at least his future, we don't know who might train him. We don't know if he'll end up being Ahsoka. Maybe one day it'll be Sabine. Maybe eventually it'll be Ezra. Depending on what happens with the next game for Cal Kestis, maybe Cal Kestis could train him. Maybe Luke Skywalker could one day. That'd be great. There's just a lot of mystery around his character, and we don't really see him being overpowered for a kid with abilities. We just see he's kind of barely using it. So for what we know at the end of the episode, what's happening in this world between worlds or world underwater, whatever's going on, it's strong enough and powerful enough. Someone who can use the Force is able to sense this. Now, the one thing that confused me when he's telling Hera about it and Hera heard it, I guess, I don't know what's going on there, but I like the fact that Jason was able to feel it. So I look forward to his story. I look forward to seeing what's going to happen with his character in the future, whether or not he'll be in another show, in another movie, in another project. There's just a lot left available for these directors to utilize within his character and his story arc. So that's one of the smaller details I wanted to mention. Carson Teva coming back is obviously a cool cameo. If you watch The Mandalorian, you've seen him before. He's one of those characters that he gets his cameos in small doses, but you always like seeing him. He's just a cool character. There's not much to him, but he's just a likable guy that you can't help but root for whenever you see him. And it's the same way again. And in this episode, kind of the way he talks, you kind of get this more of a feeling where he's a rebel through and through. Even though the New Republic has their rules and stuff, you can tell he's trying to follow it, but he wants to be a full rebel as well. So you can tell he's kind of wrestling with whether or not to truly obey the New Republic or not. So I thought getting that dynamic between him and his ideology of the New Republic, I liked seeing that. I thought it was a really neat detail to have for him. So next, we get to Ahsoka. Now, I don't know what it's supposed to be called. I don't know if it's the world between worlds, if it's the world underwater, if it's in her mind. I don't know. A lot of people are saying it's world between worlds. Now, there are a lot of similarities, but I know this isn't a popular opinion, but I don't think it's the world between worlds. I think maybe it's someplace connected to it, but the world between worlds had, as it was explained in Rebels, had portals where they can see the past and future deaths of a Jedi. Now, maybe she was just someplace else, but in this episode, we never see any portals of any kind whatsoever. So, I don't know if it's meant to be the world between worlds. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm just nitpicking too many details out of this, but I just didn't. That's just not the impression I had in this episode. I'm probably wrong, but that's just my immediate thoughts going into this. So as you all know, as everyone knew from the last episode, going into this one, is we see the return of Anakin Skywalker. Now, if you're like me, if you've kind of been down on Disney, if you like some projects but not others, you were probably worried going into the show. You were probably worried about seeing Anakin Skywalker. You probably thought that Disney's hyping us up to just see one Force Ghost cameo for maybe a minute. That is not the case in this episode, and I was pleasantly surprised. Not only is his acting great, not only was it really awesome to see his character again, but just the first thing I noticed when he sparked his lightsaber and he started fighting. Maybe it's my bias between the Clone Wars and the prequels, but his lightsaber choreography is automatically better than all the other fights in the Disney Plus series. It's automatically better than any of the Disney movies. His lightsaber performance was second only to the prequels, which is where he comes from, which is where he practiced fighting with the lightsaber, where he learned these stunts, this choreography. I don't know what it was really like behind the scenes filming this episode, but I like to believe that he just picked up a lightsaber, knew the moves, and just started getting to work. That's what it felt like to me. To be able to have that kind of a presence, to make his lightsaber choreography look so great, so instantly, was something that I just couldn't help but appreciate. And as we move on in this episode, we get glimpses of the Clone Wars. Now, yes, I'm a fan of the Clone Wars. I loved seeing this. I know there's a lot of diehard fans out there that were saying this was the greatest thing ever. I think it was awesome. I also recognize that we got Clone Wars in small doses where they utilized the fog to cover up backgrounds of really creating a large set. You can tell it was a smaller set. But I still appreciate what we were given. Getting not D. Bradley Baker, getting Tamora Morrison back as clone troopers, seeing clone troopers. That was one of the first things I noticed that was just awesome to have again. Now, I don't know if you guys noticed, I was seeing some people online were saying that the clone troopers didn't look right in this episode. So let me write this down. Here's the difference, okay? So in Revenge of the Sith, now, you guys can correct me. I don't know that this is a hard fact, but to my understanding, in Revenge of the Sith, most of the clone troopers were CGI. To my knowledge, the only one that wasn't was Commander Cody, because we see his face. In Revenge of the Sith, we didn't see any other clone troopers' face. Now, in Attack of the Clones on Kamino, we do see some clone troopers' faces, but I'm talking about Revenge of the Sith. So, when the clone troopers are fighting, of course they're going to look a little bit different in Ahsoka versus how they do in Revenge of the Sith, because in Ahsoka, these are people in the suit. That's how they filmed this episode, is there were people in a clone trooper outfit. And, of course, the shoulders, it just looks a little different, because when they were creating the CGI, it wasn't, they didn't model it 100% to how it would look on a live person. So that's why it looks a little different. If this bothered you, hopefully this explains a little bit. It was something I noticed, but I understood the difference. So that's just a little tidbit of knowledge for you guys. I thought it was cool seeing a live person in clone trooper outfit. I thought this was something I could appreciate, and I was there for it. Now, in the first segment of Clone Wars, we see a younger Ahsoka, and the actress that plays younger Ahsoka, I thought did a phenomenal job. It was kind of the more realistic, grounded, kind of Padawan version of Ahsoka we wanted to see, where she's questioning what it is to be a Jedi. And her having those thoughts and those comments kind of connects the rest of her version of the character. It connects to Clone Wars in the end when she's questioning the Order. It connects to the Mandoverse, where she still kind of wants to be a Jedi, but is kind of left behind for so long. I thought she did a phenomenal job portraying younger Ahsoka, because I felt it connected all of the versions of her. And of course, Hayden Christensen thrived in these scenes. One of the things it did for me, I don't know if it did this for you guys, but after episode 5, I've rewatched some Clone Wars episodes, and how good of a job Hayden Christensen did playing a Clone Wars live-action Anakin Skywalker. When I'm rewatching Clone Wars, I can picture Hayden Christensen in that role. And it's just something that you can't explain. And it's kind of the same way with younger Ahsoka. That actress played the role so well, I can see her playing Ahsoka in those episodes. So their performance was just one of the most notable performances I've seen in Star Wars in a long time. It was a truly awesome experience watching this episode. And as we progress past the Clone Wars cameos in this episode, when Anakin is fighting Ahsoka, we see these flashes of Darth Vader. Now, in this episode, I don't think there was a clear fact or description or explanation for what Anakin Skywalker is at this point. So, I'm going to give you guys my interpretation. Again, this is just my thoughts. So, my thoughts on this version of Anakin Skywalker is this is not a vision Ahsoka's having. This is not a flashback. This is not her making him up in her mind. This is Force Spirit Anakin Skywalker connecting to Ahsoka to help her out. So, the reason we see Vader is because if this is a Force Spirit Anakin Skywalker, the sequels aside, he's already brought balance to the Force. And as we see in his Force Spirit, we see the light and the dark side. And as he's fighting, his eyes turn yellow. His lightsaber flashes between blue and red. He flashes, Vader for seconds at a time. And to me, this is the chosen one. This is the balanced version of Anakin Skywalker, where he utilized the light and the dark to teach Ahsoka what he wants her to know. And he's utilizing the best and worst of the light and the dark. So that's my interpretation of Anakin Skywalker, is if this is a Force spirit, he has seen Luke redeem him, he's seen the Emperor fall, he's seen the faults of the Jedi Order, so of course he's going to use Anakin and Vader when approaching Ahsoka. So that was something truly awesome to see, is utilizing Vader as being kind of a part of him. This kind of felt like he isn't consumed by Vader. He's just accepted that Vader was a part of his journey to bring balance to the Force. And I think that's something that's just awesome to see. It kind of brings, a bit of redemption further to his character, because we see him redeemed in Return of the Jedi. But to see him in Ahsoka now, it just further gives us closure to Hayden Christensen's Anakin Skywalker. That he has truly learned from everything, and he's a Force ghost now. But he's part of the living Force, and maybe he'll help someone else besides Ahsoka in the future. I would love to see the balanced light and dark version of Anakin Skywalker helping future Jedi. It was something that was just kind of wholesome to experience, and there's really no other way I can explain it or describe it. So by the end of this episode, Ahsoka has been found by the rebels, and they're getting ready to go find Thrawn once and for all. Now, when it comes to Thrawn, there's not a lot of progression in his side of the story in this episode. But I think what we had for Ahsoka and for Anakin Skywalker, I think that even though we've had some fillers this season already, this was a necessary part of Ahsoka's journey. I've seen some people are kind of confused why she just chose to live. Why couldn't she just survive anyway? Why couldn't the rebels just find her anyway? But I think it's more than that. I think it represents her choosing to be a Jedi. Again, we see she changes her robes. You can tell she just has this new sense of life to her that we didn't really feel or see before. So I'm really excited to see what Ahsoka does in these upcoming episodes, because I just feel like this character's been renewed, having some face time with Anakin Skywalker again. So overall, I absolutely loved this episode. Did it contribute much to the overall saga or to finding Thrawn? No, but this was just one of those things that if it's going to be a filler, which this kind of was, and they're going to use cameos just to make it fun and make it wholesome and make it something that people can take away. And that's what this episode was. I've seen the internet go absolutely wild seeing Captain Rex. I went wild seeing Captain Rex. He's only on screen for 5 seconds. But he was one of my favorites, and to see him again, it just, I think, gives Clone Wars fans and prequels fans a bit of hope that we might get Clone Wars versions of these characters later on. We may not get a Clone Wars TV series or a Clone Wars movie or a Clone Wars trilogy. But I think this kind of represents that Dave Filoni's kind of recognized the fandom loved these characters, and I don't think the prequels are as hated now as they were. I think the sequels definitely have something to do with it. But I believe that a lot of these people that grew up with the prequels or Clone Wars, we are now the young adults that have grown up with that Star Wars, not the original trilogy. And this doesn't discredit the fans of the original trilogy. This just means we are at a time right now where there are a lot of prequels fans and a lot of Clone Wars fans. And I think catering to this part of the fandom is not going to hurt Star Wars, and it's not going to hurt Disney. It's not going to hurt the profits. It's only going to benefit everyone having more content. Now, this doesn't mean you have to bring the Clone Wars back. This doesn't mean we need more prequels movies, but I think recognizing that these characters are a part of the overall saga for being loved, not pushed aside or hated, I think this is just something that's just cool to realize between other Star Wars fans and between different Star Wars shows and movies. To see the love for these characters again, it's just something that I hope continues. Because I love the Clone Wars. I love these characters. I would never prefer Clone Wars over the original trilogy. But that being said, I love the show and I love these characters, and I think there's a lot that they can utilize. So overall, I hope that we get more Clone Wars kind of content, whether or not that's Clone Wars only characters or more stories of Anakin Skywalker during his time with the Jedi Order. So overall, thank you guys for tuning in for this whole episode. I don't know if it's my longest one. It kind of feels like it, but I absolutely love this episode, and I had a lot to say. So for those of you watching here at the end, thank you guys so much for sticking with me here. This episode was exciting. I can't wait to see what comes next. Thanks again, guys.